And he sort of took the call, and it's kind of like, you two want to book me for 2 weeks in June. I'm on holiday. Can you tell them they'll have to wait until July? And sort of, ended the call. And I was like, man, what do you do? Like, you've just told U2 that they have to wait for you to come back from holiday. So mastering is essentially, we create the masters of audio recordings, either physical masters that then are replicated in a factory, by vinyl discs or CDs or DVDs or whatever. Or, more often these days, it will be a digital file that is, the master for a certain type of digital file delivery, mastered for iTunes, for example. Kind of twofold in that you have a sort of technical criteria that you will need to meet in terms of that specific master will need to, fulfill a certain amount of technical criteria. There's a sort of quality control element in that we will tend to be the last kind of listening stage in the process, if you like. Now, if some kind of mistake gets through our sort of QC stage, if there's a dropout in the recording and, it's on the CD master and, this is a CD of the new Ed Sheeran record and they've just pressed up 500,000 of them and they've all got this dropout on, obviously that would be a bad thing. So, we need to be vigilant of those kind of things. Perhaps the most interesting facet of mastering is there's a creative element to it as well, in that we have some control over the tonality, dynamics of the piece, and we can, to a certain extent, affect the way a piece of music sounds, the way it's, presented to the listener. It's a great job because it's not so overwhelmingly techy that I don't know how to do it, and there's a nice degree of creativity to it, that kind of sort of balances that. The sort of fundamental part of it, what you really learn, it's not particularly technique based, but it's more learning to listen, and it's your kind of listening facility that improves with time, and the sort of amount of detail and understanding you have of what you're hearing that kind of improves, and there's sort of really no limit on that. Interesting, I was speaking to a producer, probably most famously engineered, Back in Black by AC/DC. He was saying that, of course his hearing isn't as good now as it was when he was 21, but, his listening is immeasurably better, and he knows that he's making better sounding records now than he was when his hearing was 30 years better, if you know what I mean. And I completely believe him. I went to art college for a year, realised at the end of it that I wasn't a good enough artist to sort of pursue that to any kind of career level that, would give me the satisfaction that I wanted. I mean, I really enjoyed it, really enjoy being creative, but, I knew that I needed to look around for something else, and I shortly after that I happened to get a job as a kind of YTS, which was a youth training scheme, like an internship you'd call it now, at a radio station, where I worked for a couple of years, which was good fun, but really I wanted to be a musician, but I kind of figured I probably wasn't a good enough musician to have a career as that, but I knew I wanted to work in music. But I happened to meet someone who worked at the radio station at the weekends, who was a mastering engineer during the week in London. I just assumed you went to a studio, you made the record and walked out and the record was done. I didn't realise there were, sort of further intermediary steps. He sort of said, why don't you come up and spend a day in my studio in London and you kind of see what we do. And so, I did that and hung out in his studio, and he had enormous speakers and flashing lights and all this esoteric, hardware everywhere. And, we just kind of sat there and just listened to music all day, and it was wonderful. And I thought, well, I don't know what he's doing, but I want to do that. Okay, so I want to do what you do. How do I get into it? It's like, well, I don't really know. It's very difficult to get into. Maybe if you look in the back of Music Week, perhaps someone will advertise, for some kind of traineeship. In the next edition of Music Week, there was an advert for a trainee for a mastering studio. Like literally the following edition, which I applied for and got the job. Started working essentially as a T-boy. It was just one of those things, and you sort of don't realise how lucky you are, because it's very difficult to get into, which I only learnt subsequently. There's a lot of people fighting over very few places. So, since then I've learnt to not take opportunities for granted. If an opportunity presents itself, my attitude since then has been to, kind of reach out with both hands and make the most of it, because you don't know where somewhere's going to lead. I didn't know, from getting this traineeship that I'd be doing the same thing 18 years later, and still, I love going to work. I love my job, and I can't imagine not doing it. I hope to never not have to do it. Do you know what I mean?